but it's funny how like those Dash problems that Dash solves, just no one else seems to be, catching up. It's like, and also that there's no real good in-person merchant solution, for example. I've noticed that as well. That for a while I thought, hey, maybe we can get away with not having to use a Dash retail or something like that. But I've noticed that. I mean, it is what it is. And hey, I think we're live. If you guys have been watching, hi, we've been talking about nothing in particular. I'm going to hit the intro graphic and then we get started. So, hey again, every denizen of the internet out there watching this. I am Joel Valenzuela. This is the Dash Podcast. I'm joined by my typical co-host, Spencer. How's it going, Spencer?
Excellent. Always good. Lots and lots and lots going on in the world right now, especially with Dash.
Yeah, and of course, I have the extra special pleasure of speaking with the CMO of Dash Core Group, Fernando Gutierrez. How's it going, Fernando?
All good, thank you. Really happy to be here and catch up again. It's been a while.
Yes, indeed. So it's been kind of, maybe this is just my interpretation, but it seems like it's been a little bit of a quiet year for Dash so far. I mean, last year, just everything's going on, like the big push to get platform out on testnet, and then there's all the talk about a reward changing the emission schedule of Dash and other things like that, and just a lot of stuff, a lot of pushes, and this year it seems like there's that relief that everything's out, that platform got on testnet, and then it just seems to be like a quiet building phase. As I'm sure the global issues we've all been sort of enduring have had something to do with sucking the air out of the atmosphere. But has that sort of been your impression of the thing as well?
Yeah, internally it's not calm at all, because Evonet was just one of the steps we needed to take to really get the platform and the DashPay wallet into mainnet. So internally, there's been a lot of work by the development team to keep pushing these new releases. Now we are seeing one every 6 weeks approximately. And the pace is increasing. So internally, it's been very intense in that sense. The blog reward thing, it's true, it slowed down a little. Just all things were more pressing, and we wanted to push that when it was really polished, the proposal, and the numbers were properly run and all that. It will be anytime. I hope Ryan can announce the date for an open meeting with the community and really discuss that in depth. It should be, at least having a date anytime now, and the meeting should happen in June for certain, because we want to have that voted as soon as possible when we get our proposal out. In the meantime, we've been talking with some people in the community, some people outside the community, changing the models and studying that internally. So yeah, at some point it's being a building phase. Also, you are right. The events that have been happening worldwide in the last few months have affected us. A few things we wanted to launch have been put in the freezer by partners or even by ourselves. We want to do a couple things in retail in Venezuela, but there's a lockdown, so obviously you can't do that, and you need to wait for things to get back to normal. So first half of the year, a few partnerships and a lot of smaller releases. Second half of the year should have more important releases and funnier things to discuss on the non-development part of things. But it's always like that. Sometimes announcements pile up and you have 3 things to announce in a week, and then the pace is not always consistent, but there's a lot of things going on in the kitchen, and also a few other internal things that needed to. like optimizing our structure internally in terms of finance. Glenn has been doing great work around that. Also legal stuff that pops up from time to time that we need to take care of. But all is good. We'll have, I think, a very interesting second half of the year.
Yeah, I can imagine. And that's one thing I've noticed the longer I've been involved in obviously this space, but also in things like this is things always take a lot longer than you anticipate. And the the one thing is like if you don't keep on releasing things consistently is when people start to get worried. But as long as you are kind of doing that, it seems to work out quite well. And so I really think that when I observe the whole space, right, and I see how well crypto is doing as far as everything, first off, like this is a great opportunity to talk about it on Bitcoin Pizza Day. This is, I believe, what is it, the 10th anniversary of the first recorded cryptocurrency transactions for a purchase. And yeah, it's always been a time of celebration, a time where people try to go out and spend it and things like that. And yet it's still like we're in an odd place where I feel like the adoption enthusiasm kind of thing and a lot across the space, not necessarily for one particular project because it can be up or down for one particular community or whatever. It seems to have flattened off and kind of started to go down a little bit because just in my little bubble here, I was so there's a pizza place up the way that supposedly started taking crypto, but the person who set it up only set it up for a couple of the coins they wanted and not Dash, and you some other people are boycotting it because they said some mean things about the wrong kind of Bitcoin, and then they're all upset. And so, like, basically, instead of like, hey, everyone, let's go spend crypto, this one spot everywhere, it's like civil war over this thing, which is like, oh gosh, it's still that way. And by the way, on the flip side of things, via BitRefill, I can get DoorDash, which is appropriately, aptly named. And so I'm going to be getting a pizza, possibly from that same place that doesn't take Dash directly, but when giving DoorDash a cut, you can get the pizza. So I will be getting my pizza anyway. So it's kind of an odd situation of adoption where we're at today.
Yeah, but I think that's the consequence of this narrative around store of value, digital gold that should not be transacted. This is just for preservation of value, which and you see all these Bitcoiners talking about Pizza Day, and it's like, oh, imagine spending that amount in a pizza. I mean, they celebrate, but they laugh about it. It's like, can you imagine spending Bitcoin in pizza? How stupid is that? And it's like, fuck no. I mean, that's precisely what you should be doing. And I'm proud of all my pizza moments with Dash. I've spent Dash.
I've had several as well. I can think of a time where I spent something the equivalent of like 13 million in nowadays valuation on a T-shirt. So I fully sympathize. But at the same time, at the end of the day, in my opinion, that's what it's for. I don't have any regrets on buying the T-shirt. It was worth to me what it was worth at the time, which was one T-shirt. And so, I have no regrets on spending that. Though, curiously enough, we were talking about kind of on that same note of like development and pushing out new things in Dash. Do you ever foresee a point in time where development slowing down is sort of a good thing? I mean that the protocol matures and stabilizes somewhat, that will there be a point in time where only bug fixes and things like that are needed, unless there's some major feature change?
You talking about the stable protocol, the locked in stone protocol argument, sort of?
Yeah, sort of. Not necessarily. I'm not saying that one side or the other that it should be or shouldn't be, but I'm asking if Fernando, if he ever foresees a future like that for Dash.
I can foresee that, but I don't think that's going to happen in a very long time. But I can foresee that at the protocol level. Hopefully, we are able to develop a rich enough ecosystem where maybe you have a stable protocol on top of which people build. And I mean, new people come all the time, build different things.
And is that kind of the idea with Dash platform, right? I mean, if you build the protocol with enough functionality, you can then build products on top of it without changing, Dash platform, for example.
Yeah, exactly. Although I could imagine that the more people build on top of the Dash platform, the more new ideas come that would improve the platform itself and the protocol, because new uses are being explored. And I mean, although conceptually, I can foresee that future with a very stable code base and people building on top. Reality doesn't tell us that. I mean, OSs for computers have been around for 30, 40 years, things like Windows or Mac OS in their different names and incarnations, and they keep pushing new versions regularly because you need to keep up with new technologies, security holes.
That's a good analogy. I like that.
Yeah. Also,
Yeah.
when we talk about the store of value thing, which it's funny because that whole argument is not something that I ascribe to, right? I just don't. I think you need to provide real utility, and clearly Bitcoin has some sort of real utility because people are still valuing it when they don't need to. And for a while, I just thought that it was purely because of its adoption head start. And of course, in terms of like where can you actually spend it compared to everything else, it's not. It's kind of leveled off. Maybe it's not even the top most accepted coin for places anymore. But in terms of markets and exchanges and integrate like in liquidity on exchanges, it's still kind of number one. But it's more than just that. It's the default. It's the code base that everything is kind of based on. And of course, this is one thing that a lot of newcomers don't really understand with all these other coins, is they're all, not all of them, but most of them are heavily based on the Bitcoin code base. And I mean, I know like Pasta running in the back there, just working on those backports all day long, just trying to make sure it stays up compatible. And it's one of those things where that's kind of the stability, is the value is in that stability of, this is kind of like the most worked on, most bug tested sort of code base, most optimized, that it's everything else that's kind of builds on it, feeds back into. Now, where it would get strange is where a lot of these valuable projects start to have divergent code bases. So as far as I do remember Pasta saying at one point that at some point it will be impossible, or it'll be very impractical to keep backporting Dash to Bitcoin because the code bases will have diverged a little bit too much. Do you have any concept of how far we are from that kind of a day?
That day is pretty far away. In fact, recently we've been working internally on precisely framework to decide what gets ported and what not and all that. But right now we can port anything we want. Mm-hmm. Obviously, there are things that make no sense because we don't have SegWit, for example.
Yeah.
But we can port almost anything. I think most of the protocol layer at the very core is very similar. Then we've built on top of that with this second layer in the network that allow us to build all these new features and the platform. But reality is, the base code is still the same, and we can port almost anything. I would not be expecting something they implement us not being able to if we wanted in a very long time.
Yeah, and that's one thing that people have this misconception of Bitcoin or Dash or things like that, as far as the code base versus the actual user experience, because the code base of Bitcoin and Dash are, in a lot of ways virtually identical. 90% of, but there's a vast user experience difference, and I speak from a lot of experience living off of this stuff for both of these stuff for a lot of different years, and almost all of the user experience difference has something to do with no replace by fee, so just transactions are expected to go through. Eventually they're not really going to be double spent as easily, and mostly just that little parameter of block interval, as in Dash's blocks come out faster, and in block size, just capacity. And they have nothing to do with really how the code base works. Just that little artificial limitation parameter is like 90% of the user experience difference, even today. Now, the other 10% is still pretty strong, which is instant send and chain locks, where now anything I buy is just instant, and with other coins, not necessarily, which is why I don't usually use other coins. And then if you make a larger deposit or something that doesn't necessarily recognize that, then it's permanently secure later. And that, of course, is some actual serious things. But most of the guts of how the thing actually works are not really that different.
Instant send, I will say, is the most I think instant send and chain locks to me are the most defining feature of Dash at this point in time. Blockchain usernames and things like that will be great when they get here, but as Dash sits right now, instant send and chain locks, to know, first of all, the experience of instantly sending is absolutely amazing. It's spoiled me, in fact, so much that when I use other projects, I'm almost immediately disappointed. No matter what other great tech they promise, as soon as I try and send something and it takes more than an instant, I'm turned off. That's part of it. But then chain locks, knowing that instantly sent transaction is secure, that's the icing on the cake.
Yeah, and
also when people don't implement someone who accepts Dash, but they don't have implemented instant send for some reason, and they make you wait for confirmation. It's like this is not Dash. This is bullshit.
Yeah, of
yeah,
course.
it's very frustrating, actually, very frustrating.
But it's still Bitcoin-esque. It's still like faster, cheaper Bitcoin, it's a good enough. And let's be very honest, the Dash user experience for most of the years of its existence has been, for the most part, like faster, cheaper Bitcoin, kind of. Like instant send, I tried to use instant send anytime I could. I remember when the mobile wallets first came out with it, and then you could kind of use it, but there was like 2 services out there that recognized it. And even then, when I did instant send, it wasn't chained, so I would send someone some money and then they couldn't touch it for a while. And it kind of defeated the purpose. It just didn't really work. And same thing with like chain locks. Chain locks didn't exist. And so it was basically, for most of Dash's existence before, when did chain locks get rolled out and default instant send all that? Was that last year, early last year?
That was last year, I believe, around March. So yes. A year ago.
So we've had like what I would call a little over a year of true Dash. Before that, it's just been kind of a Bitcoin copy for the average person who's used it. And now, if you give it a try, and ironically, most of the high valuation has been during this time of it being nothing that special, really. Like, and I think, of course, there's great innovations and all those kinds of things, but for most of the time. And on that note, a lot of the initial value proposition for Dash for almost everyone was privacy. And basically CoinJoin and variants like that have always been sort of around, but you've had to use extra special different services, maybe trust some people with your funds, but just sketchy things. With Dash, it's always been in the protocol, in the actual Dash Core software, or Darkcoin at the time. But still, unless you use that full node wallet, you basically did not have access to this special thing. And now, the Dash Electrum wallet, so I believe it was around that time when instant send became default and chain locks around, like a little bit before then or somewhere around there, were deterministic masternode lists, which allowed you to kind of do this sort of thing trustlessly on a mobile device or on a thin client or something like that. But no one really implemented it until Dash Electrum did it, and that was like a couple months ago or something. And as of, I think, last week or this week, I think it was last week, now it actually works because there were some bugs. So I've successfully mixed funds on a mobile wallet and a desktop wallet without running a full node. So now one could say, if you have the Dash Electrum wallet, which anyone can have, right? You have access to all 3 of Dash's defining characteristic features and improvements. Everything's instant. It's secure pretty much instantly, like within 2.5 minutes, like permanently permanent. and then you can also use it privately. And so now I would say this is the era of true Dash. Ooh, someone dropped off
Something
there.
broke.
Yeah, I think that was you guys got skipped over. Let me.
Oh, now Fernando is much younger. I like that.
So sorry. I don't know what happened. My internet cut out for a second.
Yes, this is actually pretty funny. But let me. So for everyone who's watching live, our gentlemen got their faces switched. So I'm gonna go fix this real quick. But let's remark on how funny it is to be able to do this sort of thing. So let me take.
This is live.
Yeah, and by the way, this is how you see like the magic of how this happens is, everything's. I have two different feeds here, and then we got the two different donation buttons that, of course, I made. Donation, subscribe that I made by hand, and I edited these nameplates by hand so they don't kind of go with them. So I have to actually manually move them over. So let us.
That's a nice haircut you got there, Fernando.
Yeah, nice. Did you have to wear a mask to get it?
And that bird. That bird's so polished.
Yeah. Let's see. Move the guest. This is a lot of the fun sausage making of the process.
Keep your connection alive, Spencer.
Yes.
I know. This is my fault. I apologize. I think what actually happened is it connected to my Wi-Fi when I got home.
Yeah, which happens. He dropped out and came back in. But again, now everything's order is restored to everything, and you actually get to see how this kind of thing is done live. But yeah, this is. Let's see if I'm just. Splouk says, "Hey, cool." Yeah, so I'm just keeping up on if anyone's been talking smack about the setup. But where were we? Oh yeah, the 3 defining features are now workable, and as of like last week. We have like True Dash, not to be confused with Troy Dash. This is True Dash, right? And a big selling proposition of this, user-friendly coin that everyone likes and stuff like that has been Dash Platform or Evolution and the usernames, which are on testnet, but not quite mainnet. So I would say the 4 elements that make Dash and amazing. We got 3 of them in the actual end user experience, kind of. But and even then, if they use different wallets, they might not have the privacy. If they use something like Exodus, I believe Exodus doesn't show up. Again, this is just for my minimal usage. I believe Exodus transactions don't show up until they have a confirmation. So you could be waiting like, I paid you, you didn't show up, that kind of a thing. So. Yeah, it's now we just have to get usernames, and then once we get those, the holy, let's put it Trinity, right? Because instant send and chain locks are kind of bundled. They're both faster, where it's faster, more private, and easy to use. Once that becomes bundled together, and you can do all that, and then you just sort of harden that by making that on more apps, more platforms, more exchanges accept things, more things like that, and all that kind of stuff. Then you will have True Dash, and at that point, I don't think it's going to be a very competitive payment space in crypto. I don't know if you guys agree.
I think it will still be very competitive. I think there's going to be lots and lots of projects. It's going to depend on your use case and what you see as necessary features. But I agree that Dash will be at the top of the heap. I think, in my personal opinion, it's already there. But I don't anticipate any competition going away.
Yeah, I
think one of those big features you mentioned, security, because of chain locks and the irreversibility of transactions. Most people don't really appreciate that. Exchanges, of course, do, and that's why they are implementing that. But I mean, you see videos of people from other projects touting zero-conf transactions as instant, and it's like there's so much education to be done yet, because that instant zero-conf transaction is not secure at all. It's not instant because it is not. It is not a transaction yet until it gets confirmed. So that big difference. Thing is, you have like hundreds of projects that don't have these, and we have these. So until you are able to educate all those people into that, in the beginning it was the same with masternodes. I mean, people didn't really understand what masternodes were, and little by little, other projects implemented that, and we were able to explain that to more people. And now I think it's a pretty well understood concept, and most people would agree that it doesn't centralize more. Although, of course, you have the maxis that will always say that masternodes are terrible. But I think with this, it will be the same. Security is not yet well understood by the general public. Ease of use will be. When we have usernames, that's going to change the experience a lot.
Yeah, now I would add another couple fingers to that, the 3 to 5, in terms of, first off, the thing that's all the rage right now, and I don't really have much experience because I wouldn't buy what most of these people might call shitcoins that do this sort of thing, but it's recurring interest or recurring income on a user accessible level, and then to a lesser extent, governance. Now that fifth one, like, let's be honest, I don't know. I think it's extremely important for Dash, but it's one of those things like long living masternode quorum composition and things like that like no one cares about. You just care about the end result. And so I do think that everyone needs to be exposed to fast transactions, fast and cheap transactions. Everyone needs to have some sort of privacy exposure, although that's a little bit of a more case by case basis, and it depends on how much. And then everyone needs to have a usability exposure, like usernames. And then I do believe just about everyone has to have some sort of recurring income type exposure. And there's, of course, the reward allocation, reallocation debate and all that kind of stuff is very long. And the fifth thing that's extremely important is voting or governance exposure. But I don't think that the average user needs like 4 out of the 5. And if you have on your phone a secure way to be able to just go through and go vote on proposals like that for like a masternode, for an actual, heavy stakeholder, I think that that's going to also help out a lot. But in the meantime, I remember this is, so do you have a person, obviously, so Ryan was originally scheduled to be on today, Ryan Taylor, the Dash Core Group CEO, and he was going to talk about his proposal or plan to basically shift around Dash's block reward reallocation and just basically try to find something it's more optimal and tweak it to improve Dash's long-term store of value properties and some other things as well. And unfortunately, he wasn't quite able to make it because he was able to make it, but not without this thing, without having released his plan. And so I said, yeah, you know what? Why don't you take another few days to do that, and then you'll be on the next episode. So all that will be obvious soon. However, on a personal level, Fernando, what do you think? What is your personal opinion of allowing users to stake or get masternode shares or just some kind of a token kind of a thing?
I mean, I'm interested in people being able to work for the network, no matter the size of their investment in Dash. Because right now the price to participate is quite high with 1,000 coins.
Like 75 grand about.
Yeah. However, I'm interested in that as long as they can participate somehow. I think it's important to grow the size of the community. And you get that by having people participate. Most people won't. Most people who have a few coins won't care, and that's completely fine. But if a small percentage of those get involved, that's what gives you some community power, and projects need that. Recently, I received the prospectus of an investment fund in crypto, which had a thesis that was quite interesting. They said there are projects that are undervalued despite having achieved more than similar projects. And many times is because of the number of active stakeholders around, not just community, but people really active. So they were looking into those projects and trying to get more people involved with them to have their valuations be more on par. Because in the end, people active around the project is what really makes them grow. So that could be a tool to grow that number of active people. However, the fact that people want to earn something, not doing staking, is not something to me as much interesting as the involvement component. But I understand that you also need that. We'll see. I'd love that in the end we have some way for people to participate in masternodes in a trustless way. But as I said, that's been finished. Ryan will share in the next couple of weeks, hopefully, and with that we can discuss more specific things. But yeah, on a personal level, what I'm excited about is giving more possibilities for the people outside the core of the community to participate, and you do that by giving them some access to voting or to rewards, because they are working, even if in a passive way, taking part in the masternode or whatever, but they are working for that, and that gives them some more incentive to read, educate themselves, participate. That's what I'm really excited about.
Yeah, and there's the one thing that I'm keenly aware of that sort of got me interested, that keeps me sort of interested in Dash. I mean, there's a lot of things to do, but is the user connectivity, is how connected are you as a product, because everything's a product, everything's a tool. How connected is that to the end user and their experience? And a lot of times, like you see, like for example, someone will say, "Hey, oh, it's good enough, confirmed right away. ZeroConf works." Maybe it does, but all I know is if I try to buy a gift card to, buy pizza or whatever, I just have to wait for a confirmation. And if I'm going to try to, some people say, oh, Bitcoin Cash, for example, is not going to be attacked. The network is all the miners that mine BTC. Most of them have an interest in this too. Most of them already like it. Whatever, they're not going to do it. Okay, but if you deposit to an exchange, you'll have to wait for a lot longer than BTC for confirmation sometimes, because it depends on, the user experience, right? But over a long period of time. And so the thing is, with, say, I believe Bitcoin Cash, Bitcoin SV, obviously, and Monero, I think, have very low inflation rates, like somewhere around 3%, like not very high at all. And Dash is currently a little bit higher because, I mean, in the case of the Bitcoins, it's a lot younger. But in the other Bitcoins, even though they're pretty young, they just picked up where the old one left off.
Yeah.
But also compared to Monero, which got a very high inflation rate in the first couple of years and then quickly tapered off. There's that kind of difference. So actually just reducing the total emission rate would make people's investment more valuable. But people won't know it. Like they won't, the end user doesn't understand that he's gaining value. And so just like the on a couple levels. So first off, the end user doesn't get that the inflation rate is lower and their investment is more valuable, so they won't necessarily invest in Dash because they don't understand that inflation rate really. But if you take that same inflation rate you were going to cut off and just throw them the inflation instead, then all of a sudden, well, I'm making rich, I'm staking, I'm making so much money. And then you get people investing in Dash to kind of like come in. And so it's the exact same, it's like a shell game to a certain extent. It's like the exact same thing, the exact same actual store of value proposition, except this time you send that price signal to the consumer in a way that it's a consumer readable price signal, is getting that recurring income. And it's the same thing with when people vote for treasury proposals. They tend to want to spend the whole budget, everything. Just we have money, let's give it to everyone. And it's like, well, we can fit these guys in. I don't know. I personally think it's a 50-50 chance this guy's going to scam us, but well, we can fit it in. We'll put it in there. And not understanding that they're diluting the supply of Dash and diluting their own investment. But now, what if you could as I'm sure Ryan's talked about before, I don't know if this is in the upcoming proposal, but what if you could make it so that any money that's not spent by the Treasury, just instead of not getting created, just gets dispersed to miners and masternodes? So it's literally the exact same thing. Again, shell game, but then they actually see the money in their pockets and are like, oh, this is what it's costing me to fund proposals. I'm going to be more diligent.
Yeah, I think that's going to be, almost certain that that's going to be part of the final proposal that will be voted. And I'm really happy about that, because not so much lately, because with a scarcer treasury, I think it's better optimized. But in early 2018, late 2017, the budget was huge, and it was exactly like you say, hey, this is free money. It's not gonna get created. We better spend it, and that's not the case. I mean, there is value in not creating coins. So if people are not valuing that, at least let's do it the other way around. So everything comes out of the rewards. So now you have an incentive to be diligent and only fund the things that really make sense. Although on the other hand, that's I mean that will probably make us as a network more conservative and more unlikely to fund the crazy stuff. And we haven't seen any crazy thoughts probably turning into something amazing, but that doesn't mean that can happen. So I hope we can keep some ingenuity there to fund things that maybe won't come through.
Yeah, it's funny. That's something that's also very difficult to find out is what the value of Treasury proposals actually is. The easy one is fund Dash core group development, because if you don't, the price really tanks. Imagine it would just be done. But if you do fund it and then new releases come out and then people get excited about that, that's one thing that seems to actually affect the price in a semi short-term kind of mode. Now,
yeah, I agree.
The airline advertisement proposal is one of my favorites because, obviously just an advertisement, and all it really did is just say, Dash is great, go to dash.org. And of course, it's not like a conversion funnel for actual new users, unfortunately. And the old site was part of that. But as far as brand recognition and earned media,
Joel, which site are you talking about, Joel? Is this Travelodge or?
No, I was talking about the ads that were on airlines. So people traveling to crypto conferences on like American, United, and a few other airlines in their seats, that little Dash ad played. And if they didn't know what Dash was, they're like, all right, this is weird. But if they did, if other crypto people would be posting on Twitter, even Bitcoin maximalists would be kind of excited, like, oh, this is cool, kind of, even though it's a shitcoin kind of thing. And so you get all this free press and earned media, and it gave that, and it wasn't a very expensive proposal compared to the other ones. And then one other one that I think is going to be very difficult to find out the long-term ROI of was specifically the Rory McDonald MMA sponsorship. Now, that was a lot of money, and I don't know how many people that actually sent to Dash to become Dash users and things like that. On that spectrum is probably a pretty big waste of money. Now, on the other hand, since that, because this guy happened to win a world championship wearing the Dash shirt, it was like a shirt like this and the hat. Unfortunately, it was an old logo. If only it was the new logo, that would have been better. But it's still similar enough that I have seen on videos with tens of thousands of views or more, on hundreds of these, or dozens at the very least of these videos, that clip being played of him decked out in the Dash stuff when they're all talking, because this is part of history of a increasingly popular sport now. And so that's something that will be a little bit harder to evaluate the ROI of long term. Now, what I really like, and this is something where maybe you and Brian can help brainstorm a little bit, but as a side thought, as we're saying, I really like the idea of attaching the cost of a proposal to actual, to make it come out of the masternode's pocket so that they understand the value, are more conservative. On the other hand, if there was only a way for them to get rewarded if a proposal pays off, which that's a little bit harder. Like, because if they fund good development and the price goes up, obviously that's the good way of doing it. But sometimes, like, how much did the price go up from the airline ads? It's hard to tell. I get a gut feeling that that was a very good idea because I just saw people talking about it. I saw the buzz generated and all that kind of stuff. But, like, how much money did that increase the price at all? Did it? I would love there to be a way you could let Mastards get a return on investment for things that they funded.
Yeah, there is a quote in advertising. I don't remember who said it, but it's very pertinent to what you just said. It said something like, I know half of my advertising budget works great and the other half doesn't work. The challenge is to know which half is which.
Yeah, exactly.
Because, yeah, certain things are very difficult to measure, and branding advertising is one of those. You need to be consistent. You need to do it very long term, and it's difficult to measure. There's perfect example with that. For example, the Absolute vodka ads. When they started doing those, I mean, I'm older than you guys, but probably in the around 2000 or 2000 something.
Yeah, I remember
Absolute
them
had
showing up on billboards.
Yeah, Absolute had around 2% market share in the US in the vodka market, and it climbed up to something like 40 in 5 or 7 years, something like that. And they kept pushing ads, and there's no way to measure that and tied to that specific ad. You just know that you are doing advertising on a consistent way for a very long time. If you just do short campaigns, I mean, would you? And then you have to believe in it, and then there's this other type of advertising, which is marketing, the performance advertising that you measure because in clicks and downloads and whatever, but they are two completely different things. So if you go the branding way, there is no way to really analyze the ROI in the short term on a very specific campaign, because the effect of those take a lot of time to go into the user. So those campaigns, I agree, those would be very difficult to justify in our budget system, and maybe that's okay. I mean, the one you mentioned, the airlines videos, yeah, some people talk to me about those too, but that's because they were in certain flights that were to crypto conferences, but no one talked about all the other flights where maybe no one remembered those. So what you have to try to do always with that kind of advertising is at least try to, I mean, segment the channel as much as possible so you get the higher percentage of useful impacts of the total number of impacts. There is one coin which is absolutely, it's dead. It's Future Coin. They sponsored Red Bull Racing in Formula One last year. And they were one of the big sponsors. And you saw the Red Bull cars in Formula One, and they have this big Future Coin logo. And because you negotiate that like a year in advance, in fact, the new company that exploits Formula One rights reached out to someone in the community, and we had a meeting with them out of curiosity mostly, because reality is there was no way we would do that. But yeah, you negotiate that a year in advance, and they had like an ICO and huge prize in 2018, and they had paid for that. And then you see this logo around, and yeah, some people in crypto see that and they check out the project, but that may be like 0.1% of the people who see that impact, that logo, and you are paying for every impression of those. So that's wasting money. So
do you
ads are very difficult to make.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was curious if you have an opinion on which direction Dash should take for its marketing strategy.
I think we need to focus on usage and acquiring users, solving real problems and chasing users. And I think the notoriety will come from that. I think trying to win a popularity contest without the real use cases being solved, it's a very short-term thing. It's, of course, we all would like to be in in the front page of every outlet. But what I'm really worried about is getting users.
Yeah.
And in those use cases, we have identified some of them we are working on from DCG. Others are being worked on by other projects in the ecosystem. But trying to solve those problems, get those users, I think that's the only sustainable way. Because competing on noise, that won't serve us well in the long term. And we can't do everything at the same time. We don't have the
bandwidth,
the resources and the bandwidth in the community, not just DCG. There's not enough people and money involved to really do everything we could be doing at the same time.
Yeah, I think it's funny to talk about the usage of the term notorious or notoriety. That reminds me, of course, the Notorious, or as he's known, Conor McGregor, probably the most known fighter on the planet right now, or one of like the top two. And what people always remember, he's good at talking, he's good at making big money fights, all that kind of stuff. But people forget that he was one of the best in the world at the actual art of fighting. You can't ignore the fundamentals. And that he did so with a unforgettable experience. You never watch one of his fights like, that was all right. His other ones are better. It's like, no, every single one of those has a lot of like showmanship, has a lot of excitement, and he finishes the fights. Like he puts the opponent away, and a lot of times making them look like an absolute amateur next to him. It's just the specific style, and that the word spreads. And then after that, okay, you put his face on a poster or something. Now because once you look into the guy, you're not going to be like, I don't understand the big deal. You're going to watch and be like, oh, this is cool. And so Dash is building the basis, the fundamentals behind his notoriety, which is, as I start.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, I know nothing about fighters, but it's the same thing with Jordan. I mean, Michael Jordan was much bigger than the game itself as a personality, but on the base of everything was him being fucking amazing with the ball at the court. So you need that, and we have not excelled at that yet. I mean, we don't have the transaction count I would like us to have. We don't have the number of merchants of real usage. Some of that real usage maybe it's traders, which is not like, I mean, it's a self problem because trading crypto is something that crypto has created. I'm more excited about the real live use cases that we may work around, but also trading is another use case. But we really need to excel at those and work in obtaining users in those niches. So then we can talk about that, because if not, I mean, what's the point of, to me, some of the projects that are very exciting for people don't excite me at all. They solve problems that don't exist. So what's the point? That's a really nice chess game, but it's an intellectual game. It's not life changing for anyone.
Yeah, and that's one thing I realized. One thing that's, of course, I'm taking lessons from everywhere I can, and one of the greatest sleeper hits of 2020 has been LBRY, LBRY, which I kind of was involved with the project a little bit. I wrote some copy and stuff for them in early 2016, but that's it. And then I just sort of tried to download the client, and it's all right. There's nothing much. I didn't get it. It was until after 4 long years. They finally released a website, LBRY.tv, and they've just been pushing every few weeks. There's some new sort of usability-based improvement to the platform. And like just recently, they rolled out paid content, so you could pay like 3 cents and watch a video and stuff like that. And they've been growing. I believe in March they had 1 million viewers on the site, and in April is 2.5 million. And I don't know what it's going to be like at the end of May, but it's finally growing after they were on the 5th or 6th page of CoinMarketCap forever. Now they're on the 2nd page again, and it's like, it's one of those things that takes a long time to sort of build that, but mostly it's been perfecting the use case, and investing in the future of the use case, meaning censorship is going to be a problem. And YouTube has started banning everyone. And so, like, there was some Bitcoin Cash, Bitcoin.com video that got banned. All these crypto YouTubers are getting demonetized, getting banned. The LBRY Twitter account just got banned, which is hilarious. Then all this is just moving people over. And, like, for example, Naomi Brockwell, a good friend of ours, has been, I believe all her YouTube videos got demonetized, and then she started moving over to now where on LBRY she's actually getting more views than on YouTube sometimes. And so it's like that kind of shift over. So to use that allegory for Dash, I mean, Dash was great, but it was rough for a long time, a rough project. And then now is becoming much more actually usable for the average user. And when you get usernames on mainnet, that's going to be like that next step. And you can, of course, start funneling in curious new users. Say, oh, I'd like to use this to pay my staff. Oh, I'd like to. You build that slow bit by bit by bit, which is, to take the LBRY example again, they spent years carefully curating content. So it's not just a bunch of chemtrail videos or a bunch of lizard people conspiracy theory videos. It's just like to where you move over, you don't like YouTube censorship, but there's a bunch of weird crap you're not interested in on this new platform. They were very hard. They paid a lot of attention to curate a great, area of creators, a great group of creators, just like, Dash reaching out to all these different use cases, like, gaming and remittances and international payroll and just whatever else, just growing small groups and all these things. But then all you need to do is see a match light, and then all of a sudden, what happens? So, for example, some people have lost their access to PayPal and Venmo and stuff like that, but it's mostly been controversial people. The one strange one was Desiree Campbell, who does Crypto Ramble and Just Thinking Out Loud. She just does some just talking to the camera, nice little YouTube videos. And for some reason, she just got PayPal just banned her for life, just for no reason, really. They wouldn't say. And I think it has something to do with some of her discussion topic videos that she was not controversial about, but the subject might have been a little bit. But this is still rare. Now, what happens when you start having content creators get demonetized more, for example? And then they can start moving to free speech platforms. Maybe they get a big old horde of LBRY credits or something, but then what do they do with them? How do they spend them? Well, I got to convert them for whatever, and then all of a sudden the exchanges get cracked down on or whatever, and it's just harder to use. Then they might need to swap them for Dash so they can actually spend them. And I don't know what the next thing is going to be, the next great demonetization is going to be, but I think that there will be one for money, not just for content online. And when that happens, just Dash has to be ready.
Yeah, right now we are chasing, most of the cases we are chasing, the traditional financial system works in those cases, not optimally, but it works. So we are improving the situation, but the more you accumulate, at some point, some of those will stop working, or the difference between one experience and the other will get much bigger. Right now, if you want to send remittances to Venezuela from any European country or from the US, because of all the capital controls and all that, you're going to be looking, depending on how you do it, at 20% cost maybe. With Dash, obviously, it's basically free, but you have the percentage you pay when you buy Dash on origin, the percentage you pay when you sell Dash at destination. So in the end, those add up, and the difference is not that huge. But if you manage to reduce that, if you manage to find usage where you don't have to pay at both sides, so they can directly spend Dash in Venezuela, you start improving the use case enough, so they will use it much more. So we are a payments experience. We want to be a payments network. And as I said, we're still very early on. We barely do, I think it's 16, 17K per day on, well, the median number, because with all the stress test and all that,
Of course.
the average, it's terrible. But the median, that's nothing. We need to get much more in
Yeah.
order to properly solve
Yeah. And
real
I
problems.
think that number might be a more real number than a lot of other networks. And of course,
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm always trying to not be biased because, obviously I have a lot of experience with Dash. I've used it for many years. It was a thing that was there for me when Bitcoin failed me. Nostalgia, whatever. And I think it's great. I think it works better, all that kind of stuff. But I still look at the data every day. And so I was looking at, was it a few days ago, I was looking at the transaction values, and the median Dash transaction value is somewhere in either $9 or $11. So that means that half of all the transactions are higher or more valuable than that, and the other half are less valuable than that. But still, like right in the middle. So you'd expect there to be a lot of 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, $3 ones all the way down, and then a bunch of really cheap ones. And then, of course, there's some larger transfers. Although the average was like a few $100s, so not that much higher than the median. So almost all Dash is in that little channel. And I looked at Bitcoin Cash, which had a significantly higher average, like several times higher on average. But the median was, I believe, under 1 cent, or right about a cent or something like that. That means of all, what is it, like 30,000 on that day, 40,000 on that day, 15 to 20 of them were under a cent. So as in not really buying things. And Dash is in the middle. So if you look at that, and what I really need is Dr. Tap's help in extrapolating all the numbers and just not just looking at median and average and that's it, but actually finding data sets like what percentage of this valuation or more, and then segmenting that and analyzing it to be like, of course, anything can be faked. It's a blockchain, right? And you can just, no one can stop you from faking a transaction. And like one thing I noticed Roger Ver talks about, he says that other than BTC, Bitcoin Cash has the highest value transferred per day. And it's like, okay, well, you have really low fees. So Roger could just move his stash from one address to another. And I don't think he's doing that because I don't think he's like dishonest like that. But someone could be on the network just doing that and pumping up the number. But it's just much harder to send a bunch of small payments looking transactions here and there. So I'd like to segment that.
I do think that some of that is happening in many protocols.
Of course.
Because the incentives are there to do it. You cannot automate that. And that's why us using median, the median for the transaction code, I haven't seen any project being honest with that. They say, hey, the average is not representative. It's too high. That's not realistic. This is the result of these few tests. And us isolating that and using those numbers, I wish we could have that level of accuracy or honesty in analyzing data, because some projects don't add up, or some have I think, was it Tron that 95% of the transactions were one single bot around one application? I don't remember the dezos, but
I think so. And XRP was something like 60 to 80% were not associated with value transfers, and Tezos was, I think it was like 60 or 80%. So one of those numbers, again, I'm fuzzy. I just read it one time, but some of that was on just running the governance system, as in just to like do the voting and stuff like that, with just a whole bunch of transactions, which the only voting transactions I can think of with Dash that are on chain are, treasury payouts, basically, the super block. And that doesn't
once a month.
Yeah. And so, for example, you do have some mixing transactions that are, involved in Dash right now, but that's still negligible. It's still not that much.
No, and we take them out when we provide the numbers at the quarterly. We take the mixing transactions out. So when we are talking 16K, that's only economical transaction. Those don't include mixing.
Yeah.
So it's a real number, but still it's very low. We need to focus on making that much bigger.
Yeah, and of course, I'm doing my best. There's only so much I can do, but what I am working on.
You need to spend more.
Yes, and so first off, my little shill moment before we get into there's a question or two, and then we can wrap this thing up. But obviously, I'm working on a series called How to Live on Crypto. There's 2 episodes out now. I'm going to make another one probably over the weekend or Monday or something, which is basically just a super simple walkthrough of how to use crypto to live on like I do, which now that I'm thinking about it is not really that hard. Like when I started out, I had to like find friends or find like the one guy who will do this for me, or, you know, but now it's just so much easier that I can actually make a video series. And so I've only done the how to use a wallet, like the super basics of how to do like send and receive, copy, paste, scan, QR code. And then the other one is how to buy, including, of course, how to do the uphold, which, by the way, when I did the tutorial thing for how to buy from Uphold online on desktop, which is probably simpler than most ways, I was still like, this is kind of complicated. But then the how to buy from transfer from the wallet, I was just like, the Uphold integration into the Dash wallet is the easiest way for anyone to buy crypto in the world. I'm pretty convinced of it. It's just other than you have a neighbor who knows how to do it, who has crypto. Other than that, it's like, you know, that's it.
Well, is your video series on YouTube, LBRY, everything?
Yes, it's on both of those. I obviously prefer LBRY because it's decentralized and things like that.
Sure.
And people tip me by giving me tips. They give thumbs up with tips, so I like money. And I like money that I can then use. Swap Space, shout out to Swap Space. You're not paying me anything, but I like you anyway. To then switch it over for Dash and then actually spend it and stuff. So that's where that is. And I've been on like 14 or 16 interviews so far in the last month talking about the fiat free challenge, which I'm just trying to get everyone to try to do this fiat free life and make it cool, because right now there's not a lot of compelling reasons for most people to try to spend crypto, as far as, you know, other than they just want to. They think it's cool. Bitcoin Pizza Day, that kind of stuff. But I'm trying to make it cool and make people try it out and fall in love with the experience, so you get more of that. And of course, in all this, I'm recommending Dash, not because anyone's paying me to do so, just because it works. And I've looked at the different services. BitRefill is a huge amount of what I can do. And without BitRefill, none of the other coins accepted on BitRefill are anywhere near as good to use. The only big competition for Dash on the crypto payment space is probably Bitcoin Cash, but it's not on BitRefill. So that just makes it really much easier. So let me hit a few of these questions real quick. So first, yes, Uphold wants KYC. And I got a bunch of Brave BAT tokens I can't redeem because of that. Hey, I'm in the same boat. I'm just collecting those BAT tokens, but again, no KYC, which is of course kind of the thing about using this internet money to compensate content creators and stuff, but then asking for their old school ID, and it's a little, it's not exactly good, but you know, it is what it is. I'm not going to complain about that. And maybe those 1 cent transactions have something to do with different protocols like SLP tokens. Exactly. And that's another thing that's going to be interesting is, so Bitcoin Cash has a lot of mixing. I don't know how much. I didn't really look too closely, but they have mixing just like Dash. Although when Dash takes those numbers out, we should probably do the same for Bitcoin Cash. And also, Bitcoin Cash transactions represent a lot of token motions. Now, of course, Ryan said that platform is going to be able to do what he called SLP on steroids. And I don't think that's going to be an initial release, but somewhere down the line. But because of the Dash platform chain, that won't be clogging up the main network. So I think always you're going to be able to trust Dash transaction data a little bit more. Now, let's see. What is the other thing? I have 2 questions. One, Splowik. Fernando, are there any planned conferences where Dash will have its representatives, or is all paused because of the actual COVID situation? If yes, what is on the horizon?
Well, right now, last few months, there have been no conferences in real life. Everything has been canceled or postponed. By this time, most of the conferences have just said this year it will be virtual, and we'll see next year. There are still a few that are trying to work on autumn calendars. Mm-hmm. Money 2020 is one of them. They still hope they can do October. I think it's the latest day they are working with in Vegas. That's one that is very good to us every year. So if it happens, we'll be there.
Of course.
Besides that, there is no confirmation of any other. This year it's terrible for this. And virtual conferences are not at all the same. We've been dabbling with a few of them, but it's not the same. It also shows that conferences are important only to a point. I mean, if they exist, you need to be there and you need to have some presence to stay top of mind of the people in the space. But this year is happening without conferences, and people keep releasing stuff, and we all keep working, and it's not the end of the world.
Yeah, and I think, of course, the best thing in the world would be, I mean, obviously DCG has to go around and present about the core protocol to a lot of things. I think that it's always difficult to get into some conferences, first, without a sponsorship. Second, if you're not officially representing Dash, which for no one officially represents Bitcoin, yet Bitcoin people get in all the time. It's a little strange. But, for example, I look forward to going to these conferences and talking about how to live off of crypto, and of course, Dash being 95+% of that, right? And hopefully we get people like, say, Ash from Dash Retail presenting about the payment space in like the point of sale retail space and the challenges with that, and then other things and some various voices. Now, I did get a question here. Let me pull up the live chat again because it went away. Hillary asks, how's the Dash co-working marketing strategy going? And is Fernando working closely with that effort?
Well, we have periodical meetings. We discuss what everyone is doing. When we met in Basel in, I think it was October, well, I don't know, late last year, October, September. Basically, what we agreed is on a distribution of markets because, again, it's a very reduced number of people working on different things. So Jan, Dutch Embassy, is focused on the European market. And we agreed that all the other people involved in marketing would provide feedback if requested, or we discuss certain things, but we would not really get involved on the actual implementation of the things that he's working on. And likewise, we would focus on other markets like traders or remittances or Venezuela or gaming and all that. And I mean, he can provide feedback in those, but we'll be executing them, or other project teams will be doing things around that. So we stay in contact. We have a weekly meeting that started as PR coordination, then it got business development, and now we talk business development, PR, marketing, whatever each team is doing. So there's some weekly coordination, but if we're talking about the European aspect of that, that's mostly Jan and Dak. Well, Jan and Sidon, Dak Embassy.
Yeah, so it looks like the last question then we have here that I don't think I hit is, what would you like to see from the community from a marketing perspective? And what are the ways we can help and all do our part? Like, what would it basically, and of course, that could be talking to the two of us right here with myself and Spencer, because we aren't actively involved with DCG or one of those other groups, but we still are quite actively involved with Dash. So like, what could we do to make your job easier?
I'd love people to be able to identify those use cases that are around where crypto could solve problems and could take leadership into actually evangelizing Dash to solve them. Sometimes they are pretty small things. Maybe you have a group of friends, and for whatever reason you exchange a lot of money for things you do together, and you don't want to do that on a centralized platform like Venmo, where you just exchange database entries, and you want to do it in a more real way. Maybe that's solving that, and from that you can grow to other groups that do similar things. I don't know, sport teams. You play sports together, and you have to manage a budget and things like that. There are all these use cases where it could be done in a different way with crypto, and people finding those and helping people get into this. Of course, there's the aspect of just getting them interested in crypto in general and putting some money into it. That's also interesting. Although, I mean, again, I'd prefer people focus on solving real problems. And then talking about Dash in other communities. The crypto space is pretty small yet, but we are only a small part of that. And discussing among us is very good because we get to many interesting things. But reaching out to other places where there's people who are already interested in crypto, so you have a lot of work done. And talking about Dash, what you are doing, Joel, with many of your podcasts, reaching out to people who are not into Dash but are into crypto and discussing with all those, because as I said, we need a bigger community, we need a bigger stakeholder group to push Dash. So attracting more people to the project, talking in all those other places, that maybe that Telegram channel where you discuss that has a couple hundred people, and you discuss things that are maybe not even exactly crypto, but could be partially connected, being the advocate in all those channels, so we can impact more people that could be interested in that evangelism is something that everyone can do with some training, and that's something that would be extremely useful to the project because we are still a very small community.
Yeah, and on a personal note, I kind of realized that was a mistake I made over the years, is trying to do too good of a job for Dash in terms of like, oh, I'm gonna work for Dash, I'm gonna kind of do what everyone likes, and a lot of times it seems to have turned some people off in the outside of Dash community, where they're just like, oh, that's that Dash shill guy. And like I kind of wasn't as much of an intermingling person. Like I kind of subconsciously withdrew a little bit. And now, of course, I'm still pretty dedicated, but I'm getting out there more. I'm talking to more people. I'm not as worried about, well, do I have to make sure I get Dash mentioned by name a few times in this interview at least, so people won't get angry at me and try to defund me and all this kind of stuff. Like there's always that voice in the back of the head that now I'm kind of like, in retrospect, I kind of let my relations with the rest of the crypto world atrophy, and I'm kind of, going back and fixing that now. And that is kind of this is an hour and a half subject, so I'll be very brief, is there's that tendency with other communities where they want to get involved. They say, oh, I love this, I want to get involved. And they say, hey, develop something, hold me up, do whatever. And so people kind of like on an amateur basis get involved, and that's it. And with Dash, they come in, they start doing that, but instantly there's like, well, there's a treasury, why don't you just put in a proposal? And then they put in a proposal, and then they either get funded and it works out, or it doesn't. And over long term, most things don't. Or then the proposal doesn't get funded, and then rather than just doing it volunteer, they just get all angry and just don't want to do it at all. Or they get funded for a while, and then they do a big rage quit over to a competing coin at some point. Again, no specific kinds of things. And so there's this kind of like not a lot of volunteer effort in the Dash community compared to other coins, because this amazing thing called the treasury. And I think that's more of a cultural thing. It doesn't have to be that way. All it takes is some leadership, which hopefully I'm starting to show a little bit of, but it takes others to just start doing things and using this stuff and building exciting things around Dash, including, like, all I know how to build is media, right? Is a voice, is content. I don't really know how to build stuff like Spencer knows how to build. But I can't, develop apps and stuff. But I'm doing what I can. And hopefully if they see enough examples, and honestly, Spencer doing the whole Spark and stuff like that is what really got a lot of this stuff moving forward. Not to mention, Pasta doing a lot of development work, not paid, just like because he's interested. That kind of stuff just really fosters this sort of environment and kind of moves things forward. So I feel like it's time for the big, long wind down speech here. If you enjoyed what we're doing, right over here, there's a subscribe button. I got to always do things in mirrors. There's subscribe to this channel because this is where you can get the notifications. It hasn't been on the Dash News YouTube channel for, I believe, 5 or so episodes. This is about the 5th on the new channel, about the 7th in total that I've done with Spencer, all discounting the last one. So subscribe to this channel so you don't get that thing. I have a donation stuff below here. Cointree is just all my links, including donation addresses, and you can actually leave a message with that, like, I think you suck and you need to grow out your hair more. Here's $5, and it's on my public wall there. Which don't say mean things, please. I think I would just open a can of worms. And yeah, 2 weeks from today, Ryan Taylor's coming on to talk about he hopefully will not have caused too much of a shitstorm in the meantime with this whole his whole proposal, but hopefully after the initial wave of questions, there's going to be more questions, and so I'll start gathering those for about the week after, like a week from today, roughly. I'll start gathering lots of questions, and then a week from then, we're going to actually have him on and, hot seat Ryan, go through all the questions. It's going to be a great one. We might even go long that time. But now it's time for this little thing called the after party, which is just like this kind of thing, except it's a lot of people and it's not recorded, so don't worry. And it can go on forever if you want. So if you want to go in there, just go to staydashy.com, put in the live chat, dashy.com. That gets you into the Dash Talk Discord. And then you just start asking around for, hey, where's the after party at? I want into the after party. Let's go to the after party. And then, or you can just ping me, or Codex, as he's known on Discord, with a K and a double X at the end. And yeah, we'll get you in. Any final thoughts, gentlemen?
Nothing other than I appreciate you coming on, Fernando. This is our first time talking with each other, but of course I have known of you and your work for some time, so always appreciate you coming on and being able to answer questions for us.
Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely.
Well,
Thanks
for the first time we talk in video, but we had chat a few times.
That's correct. Yeah.
In the end, that is great in terms of you get to know so many people, but everything is so electronic. You don't get to know much people in real life many times, so it's difficult to have like different layers of I've talked to these people in person, I've talked to these people over video, to these people over chat. In the end, everything mixes together. It's like that's friends.
It's a community.
Yeah, there's a lot of people I haven't seen even on video that I consider good friends. That's one of the most shocking things for people outside of this world. Like, you can't have friends on the internet, and it's like, yeah, I can.
Yes, lots of friends.
Yeah, anyway, it was,
and lots of coworkers.
Yeah, it was great, Professor. It's always fun talking Dash.
Yep. Well, thanks again, and we'll see you guys all in a couple weeks or in a couple minutes if you're in the after party. And bye-bye, guys.